The question sounded harmless, almost casual, the kind of thing you toss into a conversation when you already know the answer is going to detonate. They were sitting under the bright tell-all lights of Sister Wives, cameras inches from his face, the silence thick enough to feel. And then Sukanya Krishnan leaned in and asked him what no one had ever been bold enough to force him to answer directly. Who was your favorite ex-wife? It wasn't phrased like an accusation. It wasn't delivered with venom. It was soft, measured, controlled, but it was surgical. And for a man like Kody Brown, whose ego has been performing for cameras for nearly 2 decades, it was the kind of bait he was never going to resist. For a split second, you could almost see the calculation behind his eyes. He could have deflected. He could have laughed it off. He could have said he loved them all equally, repeated the same polished line viewers had heard for years. Instead, he did something far more revealing. He ranked them, only, methodically, as if he were discussing employee evaluations instead of the women who gave him decades of their lives and most of his children. He said he respected Meri the most, Janelle second, Christine last. And he said it with the composure of a man who genuinely believed that this was a reasonable thing to say out loud on national television. The air shifted in that moment. Because this wasn't just a careless answer. This was confirmation. For 15 years, fans had watched the imbalance. The favoritism, the quiet sidelining, the disproportionate time spent at one house over the others, the emotional withdrawal that seemed selective. And every time the accusation surfaced, Kody denied it. He insisted he loved them equally. He framed himself as misunderstood, persecuted, a man simply trying to manage a complicated plural marriage. But in one sentence, with one ranking, the mask slipped. Christine, the woman who bore him 6 children, who once described herself as the peacemaker of the family, the glue holding tensions together, was placed at the bottom. Least respected. Not even close, he implied. And suddenly every tear she shed on earlier seasons made sense. Every moment she sat alone while he rotated between homes. Every scene where she asked for more time, more effort, more partnership. The problem wasn't that she was needy. The problem was that she was lowest on his hierarchy. And you could almost hear the collective gasp from viewers who had defended him for years. Janelle landed in the middle. Neutral. The independent one. The low-maintenance one. The wife who didn't demand constant emotional validation. And that placement said just as much as Christine's. Because it revealed what he valued. Compliance. Quiet endurance. Women who didn't force him to confront his own shortcomings. Janelle had always prided herself on being pragmatic, on not needing the same kind of romantic affirmation. But middle-tier respect is still a ranking. It's still a hierarchy. And plural marriage was always sold as equal love multiplied, not divided into performance scores. Then there was Meri at the top. The irony of that placement could power an entire season. For over a decade, their marriage had been emotionally frozen. He had publicly stated there was no intimacy. He had distanced himself after the catfishing scandal. He had spoken about their relationship like it was a relic rather than a living bond. Yet suddenly she was the most respected. And that's when the deeper truth started to surface. In Kody's world, respect didn't mean affection. It didn't mean presence. Didn't mean partnership. It meant tolerance. Meant obedience. It meant not challenging him in ways that disrupted his authority. Meri stayed the longest in a marriage that had already died. And in his hierarchy, that counted for something. But the moment didn't stop there. Because after the rankings came the justification. He began speaking about his relationship with Kody Brown in spiritual terms. Divine love. Higher connection. A bond that the others never quite reached. He framed himself as a man punished for loving too deeply. As if the audience hadn't watched him slowly withdraw from 3 relationships while investing almost exclusively in one. The contradiction was staggering. You cannot claim equal love while ranking respect. You cannot insist there was no favoritism while openly admitting hierarchy. And yet he seemed unaware of how devastating his words were. The brilliance of Suki's strategy was that she didn't argue. She didn't interrupt. She let him speak, because the more he explained, the more he exposed. Previous hosts had taken a more confrontational approach and paid the price. Tamron Hall had once pushed too hard, asked questions that made him visibly uncomfortable. That didn't end well. Suki, however, mastered the art of the long pause, the gentle follow-up, the open space that invites someone to keep talking until they wander straight into their own undoing. And as the episode aired, something fascinating happened. The internet didn't just react. It erupted. Fans who had spent years debating whether favoritism was real suddenly had a clip. Confession. Ranking. Reddit threads exploded with analysis. Twitter dissected every word. Longtime viewers replayed old episodes and saw them differently. Christine's departure no longer looked impulsive. It looked inevitable. Janelle's quiet exit felt less shocking and more like overdue clarity. And Meri's long endurance seemed tragic rather than loyal. Because when a man ranks his wives publicly, he doesn't just reveal preference, he reveals structure. He reveals the internal scoreboard he's been using all along. And perhaps the most haunting part of that tell-all wasn't the ranking itself, but the complete absence of awareness. There was no hesitation. No realization mid-sentence that maybe this wasn't wise. He spoke with certainty, as if he expected viewers to nod in agreement, as if this was leadership, as if this was fairness. Meanwhile, outside that studio, the lives of those women had already shifted. Christine had remarried, finding visible joy with David Woolley, looking lighter, freer. Janelle was building independence, investing in her own path without the constant negotiation of shared marriage. Meri had stepped fully into her business ventures, reclaiming identity beyond wife. And suddenly, his rankings felt less like power and more like irrelevance. Because what does least respected mean when the woman you ranked last is thriving without you? What does most respected matter when that respect never translated into love? But perhaps the most chilling layer to this entire moment is the unseen audience. The children. The sons and daughters who grew up navigating a complex family structure, who watched their mothers struggle and sacrifice. They weren't just watching a tell-all episode. They were watching their father publicly categorize their mothers. Imagine hearing your mom described as bottom-tier respect. Imagine trying to reconcile that with childhood memories of her holding everything together. It doesn't just damage marriages. It fractures legacy. Because once Kody said the words out loud, once he calmly arranged Meri, Janelle, and Christine in descending order of respect, the entire history of sister wives started replaying in a completely different light. Moments that once seemed complicated now looked painfully simple. It was never confusion. It was never miscommunication. It was hierarchy. And hierarchies require contrast. They require someone at the top and someone at the bottom. That's what makes them function. When Kody Brown described his relationship with Robin Brown as divine, it wasn't just romantic exaggeration. It was positioning. He wasn't just praising Robin. He was elevating her above the others in a way that made the others inherently lesser. Divine love doesn't coexist easily with equal partnership. It implies superiority, spiritual exclusivity, a connection so rare that the others simply failed to achieve it. And that's where the narrative shifts from messy marriage to psychological pattern. Because when he explains that the other wives could have come up to that higher level if they had wanted to, it reframes 15 years of imbalance as their personal failure. He didn't prioritize Robin, he implies. They just didn't evolve. They didn't reach the spiritual plane he and Robin occupy. It's an extraordinary revision of history. One that places him as the enlightened partner and the others as resistant participants who simply couldn't meet the standard. But if that were true, why did the pattern of time, attention, and resources lean so heavily in one direction for years? Why did the cameras repeatedly show him stationed at Robin's home while the others navigated distance? Why did Christine openly beg for more presence during the pandemic while he enforced rules that seemed inconsistently applied? The audience watched it unfold in real time. And now, with one ranking, the subtext has text. He respected Christine least, so he invested in her least. Christine's departure suddenly reads less like emotional impulsivity and more like survival. She didn't leave a functioning marriage. She left a ranking system she could never win. And when she walked away, she didn't just exit a relationship. She exposed the imbalance that had been masked as plural unity. Her eventual happiness, her marriage to David Woolley, her visible relief, all become silent rebuttals to that least respected label. Because respect in his vocabulary was never about admiration. It was about compliance. Christine stopped complying, so she dropped in rank. Janelle's placement in the middle is perhaps the most quietly revealing. She was never the loudest, never the most confrontational. She valued independence. She built financial stability. She didn't demand constant emotional reassurance. In many ways, she functioned as the low-conflict wife. And in Kody's hierarchy, that translated to moderate respect. Not the highest, not the lowest, but safe, manageable, until she wasn't. Until she began openly questioning financial decisions. Until she pushed back on property disputes. Until she stopped accepting partial presence as sufficient partnership. And once she did, the foundation of that middle-tier status began to erode. Then there's Meri, ranked highest in respect despite enduring over a decade of emotional isolation. The contradiction is staggering. Respect without intimacy. Respect without shared life. Respect that didn't involve touch, affection, or active partnership. What exactly was being respected? Her endurance. Her willingness to remain legally and spiritually tied to a marriage that had already dissolved. If respect means tolerating someone who doesn't challenge you, then yes, perhaps she qualified. But the second she emotionally detached and pursued independence, that dynamic shifted too. And hovering above all of it is Suki, steady and composed, allowing him to build the case against himself brick by brick. Sukanya Krishnan didn't need confrontation. She understood something critical about ego-driven personalities. If you provide enough space, they will narrate their own contradictions. When she asked about favoritism, he denied it in one breath and confirmed it in the next. When she referenced equal love, he pivoted to spiritual superiority. Each answer layered over the last until the inconsistencies became impossible to ignore. What makes this moment even more combustible is timing. This tell-all didn't air during a season of stability. It aired after fractures had already formed, after estrangement rumors, after financial disputes, after Christine's legal moves regarding child support. When a man publicly ranks his former wives while active negotiations and custody conversations linger in the background, it doesn't just become television. It becomes record. It becomes documented mindset. And mindset matters in courtrooms just as much as confessionals. But beyond legal implications lies something more intangible and arguably more devastating. Legacy. For years, the premise of plural marriage within this family was presented as functional, even aspirational. Complicated, yes. Imperfect, absolutely. But rooted in shared faith and mutual respect. Now that word, respect, has been weaponized by its own definition. Because once you categorize people you claim to love equally, you reveal that equality was conditional, earned, revocable, ranked, and the children see it. Even if they remain silent publicly, they see it. They watched their mothers carry emotional weight for decades. They watched the slow fade of affection. And now they've watched their father confirm that the fade wasn't accidental. It was hierarchical. It was structured. It had an order. That kind of revelation doesn't just sting. It reshapes memory. It forces adult children to reinterpret their upbringing through a new lens. Meanwhile, Robin's position grows more precarious. Being at the top of a hierarchy feels powerful until the hierarchy collapses. Without other wives to compare against, the pedestal becomes isolating. If the system that made you special disappears, what remains? The dynamic that once reinforced her elevated status depended on contrast, on someone else being below. Now there is no below, only her, alone in the structure he built. And if history has shown anything, it's that when Kody feels cornered or criticized, he reframes, he redirects, he recalibrates the ranking. The audience senses it too. That uneasy feeling that this confession was not a one-time slip, but a pattern finally verbalized. Because people don't invent hierarchies on the spot. They reveal ones that have existed internally all along. And that's what makes this tell-all moment so seismic. It wasn't explosive because it was shocking. It was explosive because it was confirming. It validated 15 seasons of suspicion in under 60 seconds. But here's the lingering question, the one that hangs heavier than any ranking. If this is how he evaluates past wives, how will he evaluate the present one if loyalty ever wavers? Hierarchies are fluid when built on ego. Top positions are never permanent. And if divine love can be described on camera, it can also be redefined when narrative demands it. The same system that placed Kristine last could one day shift again. Because systems built on comparison require constant adjustment. As the credits rolled on that episode, viewers weren't just discussing favoritism anymore. They were dissecting mindset. They were analyzing language. They were replaying old scenes with new clarity. By the time the tell-all cameras stopped rolling, the damage had already been done. Not because of what viewers assumed, but because of what was plainly, unmistakably said. The rankings weren't edited together. They weren't taken out of context. Kody Brown spoke them clearly, only. And in doing so, he confirmed something far more dangerous than favoritism. He confirmed that love in his world was conditional on position. Because here's what makes the moment truly haunting. He didn't sound angry. He didn't sound defensive. He sounded rational. As if it made sense to him that respect could be distributed like awards at the end of a corporate quarter. That realization changes everything. Rage can be dismissed as temporary. Stress can be blamed. But calm hierarchy, that's belief. And once belief is exposed, it ripples outward. Think about the years viewers spent watching Kristine struggle on Sister Wives. The couch interviews where she fought back tears. The scenes where she admitted feeling jealous but tried to frame it as personal weakness. The pandemic episodes where she pleaded for more involvement with their children while he stayed anchored elsewhere. At the time it looked like communication breakdown. But through the lens of least respected, those scenes transform into something sharper. She wasn't fighting for more love. She was fighting against a ranking she didn't know existed publicly, but likely felt privately. When she finally left, he framed it as betrayal, as abandonment, selfishness. But if someone has been placed at the bottom of an emotional hierarchy for years, leaving isn't betrayal, it's liberation. And that's why her post-divorce glow unsettled so many people. She didn't look broken. She looked lighter. And her marriage to David Woolley didn't just symbolize romance. It symbolized equal footing. No tears. No rankings. No performance review disguised as affection. Janelle's quiet withdrawal now feels equally deliberate. She was never theatrical about her dissatisfaction. She didn't issue ultimatums. She simply stopped participating in a system that no longer valued her equally. Middle-tier respect may sound neutral, but neutrality in love is erosion. It's the slow realization that you are appreciated for convenience, not cherished for partnership. And when financial tensions over Coyote Pass intensified, when independence became more necessary than unity, her exit felt less shocking and more inevitable. And then there's Meri, the so-called most respected. The irony lingers like smoke after a fire. Because if she was respected most, why did their relationship stagnate in silence for over a decade? Why did intimacy vanish without effort to restore it? Why did she remain emotionally stranded while cameras documented distance? Respect without engagement isn't admiration. It's indifference dressed up as civility. The ranking doesn't redeem the past, it amplifies it. But perhaps the most unsettling shift in Part 3 isn't about the wives at all. It's about the audience he didn't directly address, the children. Because when a father ranks mothers publicly, He isn't just evaluating former partners. He's indirectly evaluating the homes those children grew up in. Imagine watching your dad calmly categorize your mom as bottom tier. Imagine reconciling that with memories of her sacrificing, budgeting, nurturing, holding everything together. That kind of moment doesn't just create distance. It cements it. Estrangement had already been brewing long before this tell-all aired. Tensions over pandemic rules, missed milestones, fractured communication. But this confession turned rumor into pattern. It validated grievances without anyone else having to speak. Silence from the adult children became louder than any public statement. And hovering quietly in the background of all this is Robin Brown, the woman positioned at the top of the divine love narrative, the beneficiary of years of preferential time and energy. Being elevated can feel like security, until you realize elevation requires someone else to stand below you. And now there is no one below. No other wives to contrast against. No rotation schedule to distribute blame. Just one marriage, fully exposed. That's the paradox no one is talking about loudly enough. Favoritism thrives in comparison. When comparison disappears, the illusion of specialness shifts. If Robin was divine because she achieved a higher love, what happens when there's no one left failing to achieve it? The competition that once reinforced her position is gone. And the same hierarchical mindset that ranked others could, in theory, recalibrate again. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Systems built on ego are never static. They require constant validation. If divine love begins to show cracks, if tension builds, if dissatisfaction surfaces, the narrative will need a new explanation. And when someone has already demonstrated they view relationships in tiers, it's impossible not to wonder where the next ranking would land. Meanwhile, Suki Krishnan sits at the center of this, unraveling like a quiet architect. She didn't accuse. She didn't provoke. She allowed silence to do what confrontation never could. Her approach stands in contrast to the fate of Tamron Hall, whose earlier attempts at harder questioning created friction behind the scenes. Suki understood that the most revealing answers are often given freely, especially when ego is involved. And viewers noticed. Social media wasn't just reacting emotionally. It was dissecting strategically. Every pause, every phrasing, every contradiction between equal love and ranked respect. What made the moment viral wasn't outrage alone. It was clarity. After years of debate, there was finally a soundbite that required no interpretation. But clarity has consequences. The show was originally framed as a portrait of plural harmony. Flawed, yes, but functional. Now it reads like a case study in imbalance. The original promise of multiplied love feels hollow against the backdrop of measured respect. And once that illusion breaks, it cannot be restored with editing or confessionals. Even more striking is how unaware Kody seemed of the seismic impact. There was no visible regret after the ranking. No backtracking. No attempt to soften the blow. That absence of self-awareness may be the most revealing detail of all. Because it suggests the hierarchy wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was an operating system. And if that's true, then the tell-all didn't destroy his narrative. It exposed it. By the end of part 3, the audience isn't just watching a family unravel. They're watching a worldview collapse under its own logic. A belief that you can claim equality while practicing comparison. That you can insist on unity while privately grading performance. That you can describe love as divine while reducing others to tiers. The rankings explain the past. But they also foreshadow something far more unsettling about the future. Because if history has shown anything, it's this. Hierarchies demand maintenance. And maintenance always comes at someone's expense. By the time the dust began to settle, it became painfully clear that this wasn't just another explosive tell-all moment destined to trend for a weekend and fade. This was different. This was structural. Because when Kody Brown ranked his ex-wives by respect, he didn't just insult 3 women. He exposed the blueprint of how he views relationships. And blueprints don't disappear just because the building collapses. The aftermath unfolded in layers. Online reactions weren't just emotional, they were analytical. Long-time viewers revisited early seasons of Sister Wives with a sharper lens. The smiles looked tighter. The couch interviews felt heavier. The cracks that once seemed like ordinary marital strain now looked like fractures caused by systematic imbalance. Because once you know someone believes in tears, you start noticing how consistently those tears were enforced. Christine's scenes in earlier seasons hit differently. The way she laughed off neglect, the way she tried to convince herself jealousy was a personal flaw instead of a response to unequal treatment. Her decision to leave no longer looks like rebellion. It looks like recognition. And her life now, stable, joyful, openly affectionate with David Woolley, feels like the quiet counterargument to everything he implied. Least respected doesn't align with thriving. It aligns with walking away from someone who never valued you correctly in the first place. Janelle's evolution carries its own weight. For years she was framed as the practical one, the independent thinker, the wife who didn't need constant reassurance. But practicality can easily be mistaken for emotional self-sufficiency when, in reality, it's just restraint. Her placement in the middle tier revealed that calm acceptance earned moderate approval, until she began asserting boundaries. And once she did, the tone shifted. Respect in that system wasn't fixed. It was performance-based. Meri's so-called top ranking lingers as the most hollow victory imaginable. Because if respect was real, it would have translated into effort, into restoration, into fighting for the relationship instead of letting it dissolve quietly in front of millions. Instead, her endurance seemed to be what earned her status. Endurance without fulfillment. Loyalty without reciprocity. That's not elevation. That's containment. But perhaps the most chilling consequence of that tell-all confession is what it revealed about permanence. Rankings may feel temporary, but once spoken publicly, they become part of history. They become searchable, rewatchable, immutable. Years from now, long after the show ends, that clip will still exist. Future grandchildren will be able to see it. The hierarchy won't just be remembered, it will be archived. And that permanence matters. Because when the children of this family reflect on their upbringing, they now have a definitive moment that reframes everything. Estrangement doesn't grow from one sentence. It grows from patterns. But sometimes one sentence crystallizes those patterns into clarity. Watching a father calmly categorize their mothers isn't something easily absorbed or forgotten. It reshapes perception. It reinforces distance. Meanwhile, the dynamic between Kody and Robin Brown stands under a harsher spotlight than ever before. Being the divine love wife once seemed like the ultimate position of security. But now that position feels precarious. Because divine status was always measured against someone else's lesser placement. Without the other wives, there is no contrast. No ladder to climb. No one beneath. And here's the uncomfortable possibility that lingers beneath it all. When a person organizes relationships hierarchically, the hierarchy doesn't disappear just because participants change. It adapts, recalibrates. If tension grows in the remaining marriage, if dissatisfaction surfaces, where does that energy go? If there are no other wives to rank below, the only direction left is inward, toward the one person who once benefited from the comparison. That's the paradox of favoritism. Feels powerful when multiple options exist. It becomes fragile when it stands alone. The most fascinating element of this unraveling remains the composure of Suki Krishnan. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She allowed silence to stretch just long enough for truth to fill it. The effectiveness of her strategy becomes clearer with each replay. In contrast to the more direct approach once associated with Tamron Hall, Suki's method was almost invisible. But invisibility can be lethal in interviews. She created space and he filled it. And that's what makes this